Book TV continues now with Martin Greenfield. He talks about his memoir, which chronicles his experiences as a prisoner in Auschwitz during World War II, to his current occupation as a tailor for several U.S. presidents and other celebrities.
Favorite retweet.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to welcome you all to Young America's Foundation's national headquarters in Reston, Virginia. My name is Ashley Weaver. I am the Director of Alumni Relations here at Young America's Foundation. And my first entree into the foundation was as an intern at the Reagan Ranch. So I'm happy to be here today for this event featuring Martin Greenfield. For those of you who are new to our programs and for those of you watching on C-SPAN, Young America's Foundation is the premier outreach organization for the conservative movement. We introduce thousands of young people to the ideas of limited government, individual freedom, strong national defense, and traditional values through our conferences, internships, campus lectures, Young Americans for Freedom chapters, also through our Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise and the National Journalism Center. Many of our interns are here with us today. In 1998, Young America's Foundation stepped forward to save the Western White House, Rancho del Cielo, so that we can pass on President Reagan's ideas to future generations. President Reagan committed himself to reaching young people through his ideas, and this goal is central to our mission. For more information on our mission or our programs, you can visit www.yaf.org or call 1-800-USA-1776. To introduce Mr. Greenfield, I would like to introduce Wynton Hall. Wynton was an attendee of our 1995 Atlanta Regional Conference, and he is one of our most successful alumni. Wynton is the owner of Wynton Hall & Company, a celebrity ghostwriting agency responsible for numerous New York Times best-selling books. He has written 18 books, 6 of which became New York Times bestsellers. His clients include top Hollywood producers and actors, cabinet secretaries, billionaires, NBA stars, Heisman Trophy winners, fashion icons, and military heroes. Wynton's published work has appeared in virtually every major periodical in America, including the New York Times, USA Today, Presidential Studies Quarterly, Politico, and many others. He is the managing editor at Breitbart News, is a frequent media guest on outlets like Fox News, and was a featured commentator for the BBC News presidential documentary, Presidential Hollywood. In addition to serving as a Young America's Foundation director, Wynton has served on the prestigious National Task Force on the Presidency and Public Opinion, and is a former visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. I'd like to introduce you to Wynton Hall.
Thank you very much for that gracious introduction, and thank you all for being here for this very special event. I want to thank the leadership of Ron Robinson, who has made this possible, and all the hard work that Kirby Wilbur, Pat Coyle, and many others have put into what I think is going to be a very memorable event for all of us. As we know, with every day that passes, we have less access to those Holocaust survivors who are the keepers of so much history. And it was one of the great humbling privileges of my career as a ghostwriter and collaborator to get to help share with the world Mr. Greenfield's story. And I want to share a little bit about what that life means and what it was to get to be a part of this and to introduce him. You may have seen CNN and many other places, ABC News, done specials on Mr. Greenfield. And what's really interesting is that they focus on not just the horrors he endured as a Holocaust survivor, as a 15-year-old boy who found himself at Auschwitz with all of his family members being murdered and basically becoming an orphan. But they also focus on the hopeful, most beautiful side. And that is, as most of you are aware, Martin Greenfield, according to GQ magazine and every other fashion icon magazine, is America's greatest living suit maker for fine tailored custom suits for celebrities. And just to give you kind of a little bit of a snapshot, because he's too humble to say it himself, basically anytime you've ever watched a movie, you've seen a Martin Greenfield suit, and certainly when you've looked at politicians. All the suits that Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire wore in Great Gatsby, which also won Catherine Martin the design award for an Oscar. This man right here, those are Martin Greenfield suits. Al Pacino's suits in Son of a Woman, Martin Greenfield suits. The suits in Wall Street and Wolf of Wall Street with Jonah Hill, as well as Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Greenfield suits. I think you see where this is going. Basically, everything that's cool and awesome is Martin Greenfield touch. Also, Jimmy Fallon, his suits are made by Martin Greenfield and tailored by Martin Greenfield. And also, 4 U.S. presidents you may have heard of. President Eisenhower, who actually liberated Martin when he was at Buchenwald and became his hero, as he'll I'm sure, talk about. He then later got to make suits when he became President Eisenhower, which he considered a great victory and tribute. He also made suits for President Ford, President Clinton, and President Obama. So whatever your feelings about President Obama, I think we can all agree he looks very dapper. But nevertheless, many other great political leaders as well. Senator Dole, he made suits for Senator Dole, and also Secretary Rumsfeld, Don Rumsfeld, and many others. But I want to, beyond all his accolades and star power and Mr. Hollywood and entertainment here, I want to share with you a little bit about what it was for me to get to be a part of this. And it was the most humbling thing. As was graciously stated, I've done many, many books. But getting to be a part of Martin's story was one of the most challenging and humbling things I've ever experienced. To have to endure the emotions and the feelings that went into what he endured. Just to quickly introduce his background, he grew up in the Carpathian Mountains in Czechoslovakia in an idyllic, beautiful little winter village, wonderland type of home, of upper middle class family. His father was an engineer. And then history came crashing in. And his family was rounded up. They were taken and sent to Auschwitz. The second day was the last time he ever saw his father and or any of his other family members. And from that point forward, as a 15-year-old boy, he had to survive a hell unlike any of us can even fathom. And he did that with grace and courage and quite frankly, a beautiful soul in the midst of it. As he was going through that experience, I'll read you a short passage from his book to introduce him. He also would then be transferred to Buchenwald, which was also one of the largest death camps, as you know. And there he would search frantically to try to find his father. He did not know his father was still not with us, but would do so in vain. And so he then realizes at liberation that he's an orphan in a world without any family and is all alone. And so he searches throughout Europe for many years, trying to find any member of his family he can, and he finds no one. And so he then is, through U.S. services, connected that there are family members in America, distant relatives that he has and he didn't know about. And so he arrives in New York. You can imagine coming in on a ship at night and not having a penny, not knowing the language. And through a rainy New York night, he sees the Statue of Liberty for the first time. And doesn't really understand the history of it, but knows it must be something amazing because he's looking at what he says is the most beautiful city. And he is hardcore Brooklyn. This is Mr. Brooklyn right here. And if you want to talk to him about why Brooklyn's the best place in the world, he will tell you until you're blue in the face. And so he gets off the boat. He's greeted by a distant aunt, and they take him to their home. And so they start a journey at 19 years of age without any knowledge of any, again, money or any knowledge of the language. And he starts sweeping floors at a factory, a fashion factory called 3G's Clothing, which was at the time the premier men's custom suit maker in America. 30 years later, he buys the factory. And so he worked his way up from sweeping floors to becoming an amazing entrepreneur and employing today all made in America, 120